Hey guys, Scott here. Today we're going to go over the September developer update. These are the changes from the PTB that are going to be actually making it to live. Typically they do a PTB and then there's changes on the PTB, and those changes are the ones that we'll have next week. And here's what we got. There's some unfortunate news and some good news. So first up, probably good news for killers. They sort of changed how the Mori system was going to work. Basically what they were planning to do was remove how current Moris work, where after 2 hooks you can Mori people on the ground. But the last survivor was going to be able to be Moried. So you could technically see a Mori like every time you 4K pretty much, but that would be only if you had that scenario where there's the last survivor and you down them. So people were trying to slug more, and the developers were worried about slugging for the 4K more to see the Mori and stuff like that. And plus there were Mori offerings that gave you even more of a blood point incentive to do that. So understandably they went back on that. And pretty much all that's changed now from the live game is that you'll be able to still Mori the last person, but you can still bring the other offerings as well and still Mori people as if it was the current Mori system. So effectively nothing has really changed, except everybody kind of gets a free Cypress Mori now at the end, which I think is cool. Just to see more Moris during a match, I think that's fine. It doesn't really change anything. The last guy's dead anyway, so whether you get thrown on a hook or whether you get the Mori animation, it's not really going to change the outcome of the match. So I think that is completely fine, and that's probably going to make a lot of people happy. So yeah, basically nothing is changing with Moris except killers now get a free Cypress Mori. That's it. So not really any downside to that. As a note, anyone that has a single Cypress Mori will be getting 1,000,000 blood points. So pretty much everybody's just getting 1,000,000 blood points for free. Now I know a lot of people have like hundreds of them, so you should be getting more, but they're just giving a blanket million to everybody, which whatever. I mean, let's be real. When's the last time you used a Cypress Mori? It's probably been quite some time, so I don't think you're going to miss not having it anymore, and considering that it actually exists in-game now, so I think that is completely fine. So next we have the Skull Merchant. So this is going to be not a good change. This is just bad. Even people that like Skull Merchant are not happy with this. Even Pixel doesn't like this. So what they did, first up, they immediately brought the haste back. But they brought the haste back in the most uninteresting way. And the reasoning behind it is sort of perplexing to me. So we've reintroduced the haste effect for a short time after a drone is deployed or rotation is swapped. This will reward the killer for using the power actively rather than setting and forgetting and randomly getting haste from survivors across the map. The issue with this is it literally incentivizes the most boring part and the most hated part about Skull Merchant, which is when you're being chased, she just shits out a drone, and then she's going to get haste and you're going to get hindered. That's the part everybody hates. That's even the part that the really good Skull Merchant players hate. It's the low skill floor. You just toss that shit up, not a care in the world. Either the survivor leaves the loop or you just get haste and they get hindered, which gives you a hit. So that is the thing that we did not want to incentivize. And now because it only happens within 5 seconds of you dropping a drone, that is all it incentivizes now. That is the main thing that you want to do to get that haste. So kind of a weird way to take that, because it basically emphasizes the worst part about having to go against Skull Merchant. And again, I've checked with people that actually do play Skull Merchant, and they agree that this is a stupid idea. They don't want the skill floor of Skull Merchant to keep being lowered. That's probably the most annoying part about her, is that the skill floor is so pitifully low that when a Skull Merchant eventually hits you for free anyway, you don't feel like they earned anything. Like when you get hit by a very sweet curve around a loop with a chainsaw, or like a really good blight rush, or like a really good hatchet across the map. Usually when you get hit by that, you're like, oh, damn, nice. Like, there's not much to say other than, oh, that killer did pretty good there. With Skull Merchant, she just fucking taps a button, you get hit eventually because you get the slowdown and haste differential speed. It's such a miserable thing to go against, and this does nothing to affect that skill floor. The skill floor is still rock bottom. They also just increased the hindered effect again. So it was 5% of the PTB, now it's 8% again. So again, we're going to be having just another huge speed differential. Again, it's essentially going to be like Bloodlust 2, if we're talking about the actual differential. And it's just going to feel like shit. So the drone rotation speed was slightly faster now. The movement speed while you're deploying a drone is slightly slower, but it's such a short duration. It's like 2 seconds if you're actually deploying the drone. So you only get slowed down to like hunter speed. It's barely noticeable of anything. Fast vaults are no longer detected by drones. All that means is the half a second window that you're literally in the vault, it won't be detected, but as soon as you start running outside of that, it'll be detected again. So for the most part, all they did was just make her skill floor low again, she's still going to be miserable to go against, and it seems like they're completely missing the point. If anything, the killer should be rewarded more for setting up an active web and controlling the area where chases go and not just shitting out a drone immediately. It's like they went the complete opposite wrong direction with how to do it. So Skull Merchant's still going to be miserable to go against. There's no getting around that. We almost had her. We almost had her dead, but she's still going to be a terrible time. So yay, I guess. The funny part is she's still, like, I think weaker than before, but she's still as miserable to go against. So now just no one's happy. The Skull Merchant players aren't happy, and the players going against Skull Merchant aren't happy. Just literally no one's happy. This is just complete failure yet again. So we'll see what they change about her in the next 5 years when they do the third update for her. Hillbilly was slightly buffed from the PTB. His overdrive saw a notable nerf, not like game breaking, but he was notably slower, and they found sort of like a little bit of a middle ground in between the 2 points now, which is totally fine. 12 meters a second is still pretty damn fast. So I think that is okay. Hillbilly will still be very good. The nerf to low pro was very recommended and very welcomed, so I think that's going to be completely fine. That is still hitting live, and I think that's okay. For those who don't know, it'll apply a deep wound, I think, past a certain point, rather than giving you an actual damaging state after you break a pallet for like just like a 5-second window. So I think that's probably a good change. Distortion now has, I believe, 2 tokens that you can get. So it's still functioning the same how it did on the PTB. It's not like old Distortion. The new Distortion now recharges when you initiate a chase with a killer. And now it can also generate another charge as long as you've been chased for, 30 seconds. It's going to like slowly progress and you'll get 2 stacks. So this is more of a perk now that's not for ratting in a corner and hiding from barbecue and chili and shit like that. It's more for avoiding in-chase aura rating perks like Zanchin Tactics or, anything that's going to let you see like I'm all ears or any aura rating perk or any aura rating effect of the killer, Clown's Invigoration add-on. Like there's a whole bunch of things that give aura rating in a chase, and that is sort of what Distortion is meant to counter now. And I'm okay with that because the previous version was a very uninteractive, boring thing that just sort of punished people for not bringing slowdown, and I don't know, I never really was a huge fan of that. So I think this is okay. It was probably a little weak. Giving it 2 tokens now is certainly better. I think it's in a pretty good spot right now. We'll have to see when it goes live, but I really hated Distortion, so I'm not really going to mourn the old version's loss. Zanchin Tactics. This obviously needed to be nerfed from the PTB. It was way too strong. So in the PTB, it would just reveal survivors near a pallet. It would just show their aura through wall. So as soon as the pallet was dropped, you just had wall hacks on the survivor until they just left the loop, which was too strong. There are too many killers that can benefit way too much from that. So I think it was a good idea to look at it again and change it. And so what they did was now when you drop a pallet, their aura is revealed for 8 seconds, which is still a pretty good amount of time. It's still going to, cover another loop or two. So it's still going to give you a lot of really nice information. And I can still see this being very worth using, especially on survivors that pre-drop pallets and things like that. So this is going to be pretty useful, I think. And overall, much more useful than the old Zanchin. What they did, though, is they actually introduced the current Zanchin effect into the perk now. So it has the old effect, but it also has a new effect as well. And then they very rightfully remove the permanent aura reveal from survivors near drop pallets. So I think this is good. I actually think new Zanchin Tactics is a good perk. I'm not a huge fan of the auras visible everywhere. It kind of gives me a headache seeing the yellow everywhere. It's why I don't like running windows either. But overall, I think this is a pretty good perk. Having 8 seconds of aura reading for a simple pallet drop is going to give a lot of killers a hit when they normally wouldn't have. I'm thinking Pyramid Head, killers like that can do very well with that. Artist, Dracula, Nemesis, and anyone that can like shoot over loops and stuff like that to know when they're about to enter line of sight again, very valuable. So I think that's going to be a pretty decent aura reading perk, and it's much more balanced now. Corrective action. I told everyone to not freak out because there was zero chance the bullshit where you combined it with hyperfocus was going to make it to live. And of course it didn't. Everyone's freaking out for no reason. It was entirely game breaking. You're people doing gens in 15, 20 seconds. Obviously they were not going to let that hit live. So, now the way they changed it, I think they should have kept the similar effect, but just not let it feed into itself with 2 perks stacking. But what they did was just make it so mists are now goods again. So that's sort of shit. But then they also made it so it's now a global effect, which is okay, I guess. Still, I don't know. It's basically just there to cover really bad teammates, I guess, which is fine. But it's not really that impactful. I will say one of the greatest buffs this perk has gotten, though, is it now reveals the aura of the survivor who misses a skill check anywhere on the map. So you can literally just point blank anywhere in the entire map make fun of someone for missing a skill check, which is fairly powerful and a pretty strong effect. So I do like that a lot. I think that actually does make it worth using. So overall, that's pretty decent. Deathbound, the effect now ends when losing a health state. So I'll just read the dev note. With Oblivion's effect being removed only when hooked, Deathbound ended up being active for far too long as most cases. We switched it to deactivate when a health state is lost, but kept the other improvements as is. I think that is fine. People were essentially oblivious the entire match until they were hooked again. So instead of it now requiring a hook to end the effect, now it's when you're hit by the killer. So I think that's fine. If you're injured, it's still effectively going to be the same thing because the hit on an injured person is just going to be a hook anyway. So I think that is fine. Certainly much better than before, an actual usable perk, and I think that's a perfectly fine change. So overall, Mori update, great. I'm okay with that. That's fine. Skull Merchant, absolutely terrible. Billy, great. Distortion, that's good. Zanchin, pretty good change. Corrective action, probably not useful outside of just making fun of people. And Deathbound is pretty decent. So overall, I would say everything aside from the Skull Merchant, that's like a 7 or 8 out of 10. But with the Skull Merchant, that's like a 5 out of 10. So, all right, not too bad. I still don't know what they're doing with Skull Merchant, man. They just can't figure it out. So that's it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.